All right, guys, we are back with another Deal Finders podcast, and I'm excited to talk to Josh Chapman here from, we're going to call it Small Town USA, and how real estate gets done anywhere and everywhere in America. So y'all know we're from South Carolina. There's a lot of small towns around here, so we're going to dive into how people can be successful there in this podcast. So stay tuned, get a pen and paper, and pull out a map so you can look at these small towns while we do it. All right, Josh, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being here. I do want to give you just a few seconds or a minute or two to tell people who you are, like what have you done, where'd you get started, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it to 2 minutes. Thanks for having me on, Andrew. Excited to be here today and to talk real estate. I live in Dothan, Alabama. Population 65,000, 70,000. I started out, I was a civil engineer for 10 years. Started dabbling in real estate. Decided very quickly this was something I wanted to pursue. So how could I scale in order to quit engineering and focus on real estate? But I didn't live in a big market, so I was a little bit unsure if it would work. Just went all in and was able. I did that in 2020. In the spring of 2020, right when COVID hit, I was able to scale to 80 units by the fall of 21, which allowed me to confidently leave my W-2 job as an engineer and pursue real estate investment full time. Here we are in the summer of 24. We now currently own and self-manage 307 units of rental real estate. So, it's been a crazy few years, but we've done all of this, put these deals together in little small towns, and so that's kind of, we focus on small town USA, like you said.
Okay, I love that. And guys, if you're listening to this, you can actually watch us too on YouTube, but you can listen, share this. Just if you know anybody else that might get some value from living in a small town and investing there, share this with them because they're going to want to take some notes. So tell me first, where is Dothan, Alabama? Like, give us some relationship.
Yeah, so we are about 15 miles from Georgia and about 15 miles from Florida. So we're down in the far southeast corner of Alabama. We're about an hour and a half away from the beach. Everybody knows where Panama City Beach is. So we're an hour and a half away from the beach. But we're known as a little town that you drive through on your way to the beach if you live up in Atlanta or the Carolinas. We're about an hour and a half away from Montgomery, 2.5 hours away from Birmingham.
Yeah, so I know that exactly from driving through, heading down to Florida, the Panhandle, from the Carolinas. So, we do hear a lot about real estate investing, and online sometimes there becomes some people talk about not being able to do it where they live because it's one end of the spectrum. Either there's too many people here where I live, or there's not enough people here where I live, right? It's either too much competition, too expensive, or nobody's here, I can't find any deals. So you're on this far end of the spectrum. You're probably not all the way on that end, but you're down towards that. Is that where you got started with your real estate? Okay.
Yes. So I love the towns between 10,000 in population and 100,000 in population. Those are kind of my bookends. I think if it's less than 10,000, yes, there are some, it's hard to, the supply of deals that are out there just isn't real high. And also the demand, whether that be you're flipping properties or you're wholesaling, trying to assign contracts, there's not a ton of end buyers, or there might not be a huge demand of renters in a market that's less than 10,000. So I love to stay in that. My sweet spot is 10,000 to 100,000. I've tried to go beyond those limits with little success. I've tried to market in areas, 10,000 to 100,000 in in towns of a population of 200,000, 250, metro areas of 1 million people. And it was just so competitive. My ROI on my return on investment on my time that I was spending trying to find deals, my ad spend, I kind of do direct-to-seller marketing through postcards and things like that. I just wasn't seeing a huge ROI on the time and the money that I was spending like I was in these small markets.
Yeah, it makes great sense. So we'll dive into that in just a second. And let's talk about where you started. What was the beginning? What was the thing that kicked you into this business of real estate? Because you were an engineer, and most people think engineers are making pretty good money and they like their job, right? That is one of those cool things that people go to school to do, right? It's like, I want to be an engineer or a doctor, right? So what is it that kicked you into thinking and doing real estate? And then let's talk about that first deal.
Yeah, so I'm going to back up a few years ago. I have my oldest son is 7. So when my wife was pregnant with our 7-year-old, she was like most pregnant women. She was exhausted by the end of the day and wanted to go to sleep at 7 o'clock. And I was like, what am I going to do for the next 3 hours? So that was what really got me into, hey, I'm going to try to find a side hustle, kind of the entrepreneur mindset. So I tried a few different things that kind of were great and then fizzled out. I started managing Airbnbs and doing short-term rental arbitrage, and really had some success in that. Then decided instead of managing for other people or renting properties and then marketing on Airbnb, I wanted to buy an Airbnb. And so in my research in purchasing properties, I stumbled upon BiggerPockets and got really sucked into consuming content that led me to traditional rental, your annual rental agreements. So my mindset shifted from buying property to convert to short-term rentals to buying traditional rentals. And so my end goal internally, I didn't really share this with anybody except my wife. I wanted to quit engineering. I wanted to be my own boss. Didn't really love the 40-hour per week W-2 job. So my driving factor was, how can I scale this business to justify leaving my W-2 job as an engineer? Like you alluded to, people, engineers. I had a good salary. When I told my parents that I was going to leave my engineering job, that I worked hard to get a degree for, they're like, "Are you crazy? Like, you're going to leave your engineering job and focus on real estate, which you've never done." But yeah, I jumped all in. Really was excited. I started out wholesaling because I didn't have the capital that I thought I needed to scale a real estate business quickly to offset my engineering income. So in the spring of 2020, right before COVID hit, I started just consuming every book, reading every book I could get my hands on, listening to a bunch of podcasts. And really the next month or two was in learning mode. Then about in April of 2020, that's when I started marketing. And between April and December of 2020, I did 11 assignments. I started wholesaling and assigned 11 contracts and grossed roughly about $100,000. And I still had my W-2 job. And then tax time came, and you netted of that $100,000 that you grossed, you net somewhere around $50,000. And oh, by the way, you owe the IRS $20,000. I was like, ooh,
wait, whoops.
I didn't account for that. So that's when I kind of shifted to more of a buy and hold strategy. I bought my first rental in January of 21 and worked my way up to 80 units by October of 21, which is when I left my engineering job and focused on real estate investment full time.
I love it. So there's a lot there, a lot to unpack, and so we'll try to do that so that people can understand kind of the flow of this. One big thing that I heard you say a few times is that you were just consuming content and reading books and listening to podcasts. And guys, I'll tell you, when my first house was back in 2007, so many, many years ago, right out of college. I didn't read any books. I didn't listen to any podcasts, whether they were available or not. Podcasts, Bigger Pockets. There's no forums. The how-to videos all over Facebook and YouTube just wasn't there. And we still bought a house, but we made a ton of mistakes. And today, guys, if you're thinking about this, if you're trying to get started and you're just getting in, there's so much available for free that can get you to a place where you might need some help. You might need some coaching or guidance or like specific strategies that get you to that next level. But getting started and learning this business has never been easier. There's books and tutorials and classes. Go learn. It's a business. You went to school for 4 years probably, for engineering, for that job, for that business. 5 years, there you go. Like the fact that people kind of go into real estate without learning just drives me crazy. So I just wanted to make sure that we hit on that. And let's go back. Your very first deal, was it a wholesale deal that you got, or did you arbitrage your first?
Yeah, so let me back up a little bit, because you said something. Definitely spend some time. Don't jump in blind. But I think there's an extreme on the other end too. And I talk to a lot of people who spend way too long learning and never take that first step. So let me step in and add to that. We all have heard of analysis paralysis. So there is a ton of content out there that's free, but you can become overwhelmed with that, and it kind of scares you, and you're intimidated by all these different shiny objects that kind of keep you from taking that first step, or causes you to take that first step really slow. And so, I just caution the listeners not to be overwhelmed and feel like you got to spend a year learning and studying.
Absolutely. You certainly don't sit and do and just learn without doing. Most of this education, and when you go from 0 to 80, you learned a lot on that 80th deal, right?
Yes.
You learned a ton in between 0 and 80, but you had to get started.
The books can't teach you.
Yeah, none of that comes from the books. And this is one thing for the partners that we work with, deal partners, and locally we coach and teach. And what you were just describing is that need and that desire to know every possible outcome, every variable, what can happen, what if this, what if that, what do I do when? And we have to, and you do this too in your local market, is help people get over that hump and explain through experience. You will find out what to do when, but you're not there. So it doesn't matter what, like I hear it all the time. Well, what should I do when I get 100 units? What is that when I should make my own property management company or whatever, some crazy goal, but you got to get 1 unit, right? We don't need to make that decision. So, that happens every day where we have to get people out of their own way. So get your mind out of the way. Yeah.
I love the expression, it's pointless to steer a parked car.
Right.
You got to hit the accelerator. Otherwise, steering the steering wheel doesn't matter. If you're sitting in park, the steering wheel doesn't have a whole lot of use.
That's right.
So you got to hit the accelerator. I certainly don't advocate for being reckless. But you can spend way too long, and I've worked with a lot of people who spend way too much time learning and not enough time acting.
Yeah, you got it. So tell me about your first.
Yeah, my first deal. It was actually about 5 blocks from where my house is, and it came to me through a postcard. It was the house was left to some siblings. Their mother and father were deceased, and there were a group of 3 siblings. The property had been vacant for about 5 years, so they had been upkeeping the lawn, and it was just in disarray. I got the property under contract for $40,000. I assigned it. I was excited because this is the first property I got under contract. I was real excited, and turned around and assigned that property for $50,000. So deal number 1, I cashed a check as a wholesaler for $10,000, and I was all in after that.
I love that. And so we're going to talk about this for just a second. Is, guys, as deal finders, we're always talking about where are those deals? Where are the deals? How can we find them? You know, they're not all across. They're not in another state. They're not in another county. They're literally in your backyard. And I don't care if you're in a town with 70,000 people, 10,000 people, or 1 million. There are deals in your backyard. And it might be a very competitive market, but you can get one to get that first $10,000 assignment, and then you move out. So you were able to find one, you said 5 blocks away, which is incredible, but you got to them through marketing. And so can you tell us what was the list that you pulled? And you said it was a postcard, right? So what did that look like?
Yeah, so when I started out, I had 2 main sources of kind of lead generation. I downloaded the Deal Machine app and was driving for dollars. This property did not come from my Driving for Dollars list. I signed up for PropStream, and this came from a vacant list. Like I said, the property had been vacant for a few years. So this came from a postcard. So if you've ever used PropStream or any other type of list creator, tool, you can type in some search criteria and export a list of properties that meet the criteria that you're searching for, and then you just send that list to a print shop. There's so many different ways to mine these days that streamline it and make it easy. But this came from a vacant list.
Yeah, I love that. So, guys, for the instructions, I can give it to you right here. Is PropStreamVIP.com is where we go, and you can get a free trial, I think, because of the Deal Finders podcast. If you go there, and at the top, it'll say vacant. So you just put your town, and you just click the button that says vacant, and it's so easy. You can actually send the mail through there, or direct mail VIP.com is our mail house that you can send it through. And that's literally how we do our postcards as well. Y'all, if you need help on that, just shoot me a message. I'll send you what postcard we use. It's phenomenal. We get great results from it. So that's how you got your first deal, and that was not very long ago, and now you're at 300 plus. So can you, is this 300 single family? Are we in apartments now? What are we doing?
It's kind of all over the board. I'm an engineer. I love numbers. I love analyzing things. So I quickly got sucked into spreadsheets and calculators and all this kind of stuff. But I kind of, once I went from wholesaling in 2020 to analyzing deals for buy and hold in 2021, I wasn't picky on the asset class. At that point in time, interest rates were extremely low. So a lot of things penciled out, meaning when I typed in the numbers into this spreadsheet, which was really simple, it spit out what my cash flow was going to be. And I had certain metrics that I was trying to meet in terms of cash flow and cash on cash return. And once it met those metrics, I'd buy it. That sounds overly simple. I did not use.
But it is, right? Isn't it?
It is. It's just repetition. It's repetition.
And it's just math. It's just math. And I say that. I say that kind of jokingly. It's just math because I'm a math guy too. Like I like math. We talked before. He's a Clemson grad. I'm a Carolina grad. the math people go to Clemson. My mom actually has a math degree from Clemson, but I stayed around here, but the math when it works, and we stayed around the office, and I tell my kids all the time, it's when the math is, then we do the math is, right? Like if it works and the math is mathing, we go. So we just work with numbers, and I know that's a little bit confusing and scary for people, but that's why these worksheets and what do they call it, the calculator on Bigger Pockets, even, like there's some really great stuff out there.
Yes.
But I want to know what was your cash flow metric? Were you doing like per door per month? What was it that made you say this is a deal?
Yeah, so I was looking for things that at max leverage. So I was the bank I was working with was giving me a 20-year amortization, requiring 20% down at that point in time, and interest rates were 4.5. So when I was typing in numbers into a spreadsheet, I was looking for a minimum of $200 of cash flow at the end of the month, after I factored in my mortgage, after I factored in any and all expenses. I was self-managing, so I didn't have to pay a property manager. I was, you factor in your insurance, your taxes. I'd set aside 18% in maintenance and repairs, 5-6% in vacancy. So I was factoring in everything, and then hoping, once that came out and showed, hey, you're making at least $200 a door in cash flow. The other metric I was looking for was 15% cash on cash return. So if you don't understand what cash on cash return is, it's literally the amount of money that you're making at the end of the year through your cash flow. Remember, I was looking for $200 a month. Your annual cash flow, so your monthly cash flow times 12, divided by the 100% of the money that you had to put in. So for me, it was the 20% down, and if there was any rehab costs to the property. So all the money that you had to put in up front is the other piece of that equation. So your annual cash flow divided by what you had to come out of pocket with up front. That is your cash on cash return. And I was looking for 15%.
Right. And that's a really good number. So at 15%, you're paying yourself back over about 6 years. Is very, and again, we go back to the math, but that's a very common number. You'd like to, in a lot of investments in business, if you're going to open a business or build something, you'd like to get your money back in about 6 years, right? If you can get it back sooner, great. So you have very similar metrics. Again, we're talking about small town America, that you could do this anywhere. We are, in Columbia, we have more people, but we have pockets around, and so we have small, like, towns, suburbs, and that's kind of where we do most of our business, is right around the city. We have some in the city center with the student rentals and stuff, but it's great to hear, because we have the very, very same metrics for cash flow per door after taking all the expenses out. I'd like to ask, though, have you changed that? Has that, in today's market, with interest rates are now double what they were, do you still look for the 200 per door, or are you getting a little bit more aggressive? How's that look?
So I haven't touched at all on the strategies that I've used and what allowed me to scale so quickly. So I no longer, after doing my first 1 or 2 deals, I learned, I got the confidence, and I learned ways to do deals without using any of my own money. And so that's what really allowed me to scale and scale quickly. So I did that in 2 different ways. If my marketing efforts, if I generated a lead, got a contract for a single family house, I built up a network of private money lenders. And the ultimate goal, I'm not going to go too much into detail, but the ultimate goal was to do the BRRR. Most people will know what BRRR means: buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. I would use private money to BRRR. And the ultimate goal was to get into, to purchase a rental property, get it rehabbed, get it rented out, with zero of my own money tied up, without using any of my own money. And so I did that. I've done that over the last few years, probably close to 50 times. The other method that I used when I was marketing and I would get a phone call or get a contract on a bigger deal, whether that be a portfolio of single-family houses. We own 6 mobile home parks. We own 2 commercial strips. We own 3 small apartment complexes. All of those are held in partnerships. So I would put together a partnership with other investors who might be successful businessmen that don't have time to really work the deal and manage the deal. So the value that I brought, I would bring the deal to the table, and I would manage the acquisition process, and then also self-manage the property management piece after we closed. So my investors, my partners, were very hands-off. They mainly just brought the cash to the closing table. In exchange, we worked out up front what the equity split of the deal was and the cash flow split was. All of that was worked out on the front end. But that's what's allowed me to scale to 307 units today. Just within about 3.5, 4 years, was mainly those two things. So I know there's a lot of stuff that is in between that, but those are the 2 primary strategies I've used.
Yeah, I love that. So the BRRR strategy is, for guys, if you haven't heard this, we have a video on it, I'm sure, on YouTube, because we've talked about it a bunch, which is you buy the house at a discount, you renovate it, you usually buy it with, like you're saying, someone else's money, right? You can get a private investor money or bank money or your own capital that you're okay using for a little while. So you buy it at a discount, you renovate it, you get it rented out at a better rate, higher rate, and then you go refinance for long-term debt and long-term financing, so that when you refinance, the ultimate goal is to get all of that capital that you invested back out. And sometimes we can get a little bit more than what we put in, right? Depending on the value of the house and the bank's, what their loan to value that they're going with. So that's the exact strategy that we used when we were growing and scaling super fast. When we went from 4 to 34, and then from 34 to 104, and now we've sold a whole bunch. But this is the exact same strategy, because you're able to take that bucket of cash and recycle it over and over again. And I think that's probably one of those things that most people don't understand, that you don't, to get into real estate, is you don't have to have all of this capital up front. You just need something to get started, which is where wholesaling comes into play a lot. And then you work the strategies, you work the business, you learn how this works, and then you get partners, right, to make you go bigger, faster. So when you're doing that, you're managing these as well. So you've gone and made a second business, and that's, we like to keep it totally separate, right? We're actually just now doing that because we've had multiple property managers, and now we're brought it in-house. It's completely separate. Property management is not investing. That's a job. It's a business on its own, right? I own a property management company here in my local market now. We started that about 1.5 years ago because our portfolio got to the point we had all the processes and systems and team in place where it just made sense to start managing property for others. It is a job. It is not easy. That's right. Yep. But I love it. I love it. So you've seen this progression. You went really big and fast in the last 3 years. What's the future look like? Where are you going next, Josh? What's happening in Dothan?
Yeah. I'm not marketing like I was a couple years ago. In a small town, this is another thing that I love about small towns. Your reputation is a big deal. So you want to do good business, and you want to do what you say you're going to do. So, if I would have started out and got things under contract and just backed out of 9 out of 10 contracts and didn't really close on things, then I become the guy who doesn't close the deal. And so I early on, everything I got under contract, unless the seller just completely led me astray, I closed on stuff. And so now I don't have to market. People bring stuff to me. They know, if the property needs some work and it's distressed, but you can get things at a good deal. People bring me deals and say, hey, run your numbers, see what you can make work on this. And so when I make an offer, they know that I'm going to hold up my end of the deal. We're going to close. We're going to close quick. It's a cash purchase, and people don't worry. That's why they bring me deals, is because they know I can get it done. So what does the future look like right now? I am in the middle of property management stuff. I'm working with my team, doing a few deals a year. Interest rates definitely take a toll on the speed at which we're acquiring. We just closed on, it's probably been about 6 months ago. We closed on a portfolio of 68 units, combination of small multifamily and single family. So that was the biggest deal I'd ever done. We're still acquiring, not at the speed we once were. But I'm really getting the itch. I actually signed back up for PropStream earlier. He built a list and about to blast some mail pieces out. So it's in my DNA now. Marketing and then putting deals together is something I really enjoy. So I don't really have an end goal in terms of the number of units or net worth or anything like that. I'm still I'm a math nerd, and if the numbers work, I'm gonna try my best to do it.
Yes, and so I love that. I love that kind of perspective on it. That it's just doing the business. It's just being in the game. It's just doing it. There's no real end. But one thing that you hit on, and this is what kind of I think ties us together, where we're talking the small town, being the local home buyer, the local property buyer, is a mindset and a way of business that you can only do it by doing things the right way, right? Your reputation leads out in front of you. We've been the local home buyer here, cash home buyer, for over 6 years now, I guess, marketing, out there, putting our name out there. And those deals that we did back then, because we closed when we said we did, we didn't go back and try to hardball negotiate people. We are getting referrals over and over, and people are sending us friends and family and saying, just call them, they will take care of you. That is what is continuing to propel our business further and faster, because that's, quote, free marketing, right?
Yep.
It takes a mindset and it takes a business practice to do that. And that's what we try to teach people in our market, is do things the right way, be a good citizen, help in the community. Don't just try to make a buck at someone else's expense. And you can last a lot longer, and you'll look back, 3, 4, 5, maybe 10 years and say, you know what, that was a good idea. and people will bring you deals. Yeah. And, we like to say, you're going to see these people in the grocery store. If you're doing deals in your neighborhood, I don't want to be the one hiding and ducking behind the dog food because that person's mad at me because we didn't close their house. Right.
Yeah.
I love that message. I love that. How can people reach out to you if they want to see you down in Dothan, or what? Do you have an email or something that people can reach out to you if they have questions?
Yes. Email's probably the quickest, easiest way to get me. Josh, Josh, at smalltowninvesting.com. I also hang out on Facebook. That's really the only social media platform that I'm on. Josh Chapman, or I have a page, Small Town Investing with Josh Chapman. So I love helping other folks that are just getting started out in real estate, or are trying to learn and need some additional encouragement. Don't feel like you got to be in a big town. All of the stuff that we own is within 2 hours of my front door. In the market that I live in is the biggest market that I invest in. The other markets are little small towns outside of Dothan, 10,000, 15,000 people. So don't feel like you got to be in a huge metro area, a big city, to be successful. You can be the only person hustling in your town, and you can crush it. So,
that's right.
Be encouraged to get out there and take some action.
Yeah, and I'll add one thing to that. The small town looking and be that only person, because and maybe you saw this with that portfolio. There's usually in those towns, there's usually one or two landlords that have been there for 30, 40 years.
Yes.
And they've got a portfolio that is coming due. We're negotiating, talking to one right now. They're ready to sell. The kids don't want it. Kids can't do it. Those towns are where you can literally go walk in with none and walk out with 68 in one deal.
Do you have a few minutes where I can tell that story? That's a good story.
Yeah, tell it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So the guy that we bought that from, he was an elderly man, probably mid-70s. And I reached out to him. I was actually driving by, delivering a Meals on Wheels route about 2 years ago. And I passed by. He had 3 fourplexes that were side by side. And I passed by, and I was like, man, I want to own that. That's a great property. So I just pulled up his information on the local tax map, and Googled his name and called right there. And I said, hey, Mr. Smith, I understand you own this property. Any interest in selling? And he gave me the line, well, everything's for sale at the right price. Yeah. And I said, well, I'm interested in talking with you. And he said, well, I own that, but I also own a total of about 70 units. And I was like, great. Can we set up a time to talk later this week? And he said, sure. So I met with him. He sent me all the information about his properties. I made him an offer. He came back with a counter, and we were too far apart. Couldn't put it together, couldn't make it work. But I set a reminder on my phone to follow up with him every 4 months. So every 4 months, I would shoot him a text message, give him a call. Hey, how are things going? Life treating you well? Just check in, just to check on him. And I wanted to be front of mind whenever he got around and was eager to sell. And so he called me last August and said, hey, are you still interested in buying my portfolio? I said, yes, sir. I would love to talk with you. He said, well, I'm unfortunately, I'm having some health issues. And so, he had some motivation. He was a little more eager to sell at that point. So we met again and talked, and we were able to make it work. And if you identify some property and you do talk to a guy that is a tired landlord, and even if you're not able to make it work, don't give up. Keep nurturing that relationship, because there is going to come a time where there's a little more motivation, and you want to have that relationship built with that person, where you're the first person they think of when they do decide to sell.
Absolutely, because again, there's not many people out there hunting for it in that small town. So I love that. That's a great story to wrap up. We've got multiple stories very similar. Again, this is what happens in markets of this size. So y'all, I hope this has been beneficial and educational. This is just another resource. The dealfindersclub.com has plenty other resources. We've got videos, we've got contracts, we've got just about anything you need to get started. But we also have live events. So if you're in South Carolina or want to come to one of our events, we're in Columbia, come check us out. We do something just about every week. And if you need anything, you can reach out to us there at dealfindersclub.com. And until next time, go find a deal. Maybe even in a small town, all right? We'll see y'all later. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the REI Deal Finders podcast. You can find out more and apply to be a part of the REI Deal Finder community at reidealfinders.club.